Hey guys, welcome to another great video. We're gonna do a new series. It's kind of intense, but I think these words definitely need to be said and these perspectives definitely need to be heard. First, we're gonna do a worship session, and so prepare your hearts and let the Holy Spirit move.
I've tried so hard to see. It took me so long to believe it, that you choose someone like me to carry your victory. Perfection could never earn it. You give what we don't deserve, and you take the broken things and raise them to glory. And you are my champion. And giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all. Finally see it. You're teaching me how to receive it. So let all the striving cease, 'cause this is my victory. And you are my champion. The giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all. And shout, every wall comes crashing down. I have the authority that Jesus has given me. And when I open up my mouth, miracles start breaking out. I have the authority Jesus has given me. And when I lift my voice and shout, every wall comes crashing down. I have the authority that Jesus has given me. And when I open up my mouth, miracles start breaking out. I have the authority Jesus has given me. When I lift my voice and shout, every wall comes crashing Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won. I am who you say I am. Bear me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated with the one. 'Cause you are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won. And I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am in the heavenly place, undefeated with the one who has conquered it all. Every wall comes crashing down. I have the authority Jesus has given me. And when I open up my mouth, miracles start breaking out. I have the authority Jesus has given me. When I lift my voice and shout, every wall comes crashing down. I have the authority Jesus has given me. When I open up my mouth, miracles start breaking out. I have the authority Jesus has given me. And you are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated with the one. 'Cause you are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won. And I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated with the one who has conquered it all. My champion. And giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated with the one who has conquered it all. You are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won, and I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, the one who has conquered it all. You are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated. I'm surrounded by grace. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all.
Hey everybody, welcome. Today we are here to have real conversations. The Bible says in Isaiah 1:18 that we should come together and reason together. I am so excited that we get to have a conversation with Ross from Collective, Ceitci from Motivated by the Impossible, coming here to answer some questions that people have been asking. Especially as we are walking towards the election, there's many confusion going on, and I feel like it's a great time to have real voices, clear voices to tell us or answer the questions that we've had on some issues that have been coming up during this season. So I would like to just jump right in. So I have a question that I feel like not only people are asking, but it's a question that I am asking. Even though I came from a third world country, this is a question that I need to differentiate what is going on between the word socialism and communism. So what is the difference between the two?
Maybe I'll start just because I grew up under communism, and then we became socialist state after communism fell in 1989. But I would say the two major differences, first of all, there are two similarities. And the main one is socialism was founded by Marx, and then it morphed into communism by Lenin. So when you're talking about communist state, it has to be socialist state first in order to become communist state. And in the communist state, you basically have everything is already taken over by the government. You have no personal housing or land. Everything belongs to the government. The government does dictate everything else given to the population as far as food, jobs, healthcare, all of those things that everybody says they're going to be wonderful and amazing for everybody to share. So let's just say everybody shares in it. So you bring in collective amount of work, but not everybody works on the same level. And at the same time, you have equal opportunity to everyone and equal outcome for everyone. So nobody gets paid extra money or less money just because you work less. And then under communism, we have one person who becomes the dictator. So in our case, we had somebody for 45 years who was running the country. And then finally, communism fell in 1989, and he was prosecuted for the killing of a lot of people, concentration camps. All of the people that opposed the Communist Party were killed, including Christians. In socialism, per se, you don't have just one dictator, you have an actual election. But everything is still pretty much the same. I always say they're brother and sister. They are not two separate structures. They're all very much alike. except that you don't have just a one person running it for the rest of your life. You would have a government structure that is actually entitled to running everybody else's life. So you have a big government, and they operate everybody else underneath them as though they are all like they're smaller dictators in power for indefinite, because you just don't know how long they would be in power. So that's how I view socialism and communism. Brother and sister, started off with Marx, morphed into communism with Lenin.
Yeah, socialism is the pathway from capitalism into communism, right?
Wow, that is really interesting, because right now I feel in our nation, I keep seeing that word socialism, and I keep seeing people excited about it. So it brings me to the next question. What are the lies that are being promoted? Why is it that so many people are excited about socialism? These are people that have never been to a socialist country, but there's some things being promoted. Like one of the slogan I hear is free healthcare, free education. I feel like first and foremost, I would like us to address what this freedom is, and why is there such a hype about socialism right now?
Yeah, it's definitely nothing's free. And it's funny because socialism never creates wealth. It can only steal it from someone else. And eventually it runs out.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's how they take over the means of production, they take over private property eventually, and just keeps going.
So I have a really good quote by Ronald Reagan. I'm gonna read it for everybody. Socialism only works in two places: heaven, where they don't need it, and hell, where they already have it. So I always loved Ronald Reagan just because as a president, he was able to come in and oppose the socialist state, which Eastern Europe, including Russia, we were all under the socialist state, which we were communist, but everything was already privatized, the removal of private property and all of that. So he was addressing from the Berlin Wall, Eastern Germany, and he was on the western part of Germany. And when he was addressing it from that side, and when he saw the brokenness of the people and the oppression that they were living in, his speech that he delivered was not in his notes. It was basically just impromptu. He was just moved with compassion for the people that he was seeing on the other side of that wall wanting freedom. First of all, I'm not American, so I can't really answer what freedom means to me from an American perspective, but I can answer it from coming from communism to America and understanding freedom once I got here. First of all, the Statue of Liberty, to me, it represents the freedom of what America represents right here, that everybody is free with their own ideas, their own identity, dignity, value, who they are, created in the image of God, to be able to fulfill all that they would love to fulfill, all of their dreams and visions, to pursue that happiness that no other country will ever offer. And to me, freedom also means the ability to choose, to have the right to choose what you would love to do, where you would want to live, the choices that were represented, not just at the stores, but just the opportunities that we have. As a foreigner coming from a closed nation like Bulgaria to America, I saw opportunities everywhere, while people living here couldn't see their own opportunities because they're so used to living in freedom that they don't actually understand what bondage means. So I think in order to understand freedom, you actually have to see people in bondage. And for us, there was no freedom. There is no freedom of choice. You were always put down. You had no absolute dignity as a human being. You were afraid and living in fear every single day. You couldn't just start a business under communism and own any kind of a private businesses. Everything was owned by the government. So there was never the freedom to actually express who you are as a human being. It was the suppression of your humanity and dignity and value as who you are. So to me, freedom is not just the freedom that we experience in Christ. That's a different type of freedom for your soul and for your spirit. But just in general, speaking of freedom, to be able to show up and to do whatever you would love right here in America, and no other country offers that. And I've been to other countries and I can vouch for it. There is absolutely no other nation where you can just decide, I'm starting a business today, and then tomorrow I'm going to succeed, because you're going to be taxed way ahead before you even start the business in many of those countries. So that's how I view freedom. I saw the Statue of Liberty as we were flying over it, and I thought, wow, I am in the country of freedom and dreams.
Kind of when we were talking earlier about, you mentioned equal opportunity versus equal outcome. Because like in the US we have, I mean, anyone can start from nothing and become, you know, whatever they want to be, which in a way is equal opportunity. But under socialism, what is equal opportunity and equal outcome? What does that look like?
Oh, well, so first of all, even the statement equal opportunity is false, because you may have, so to say, equal opportunity to start, like go to college, study, go to school, be able to go to the hospital. Yeah, we all have the equal opportunity to be somebody, except that once you actually get to study, you're suppressed in your studies. You're told every single day you're stupid, you're not going to succeed, you're not going to amount to anything. And then by the time you get to college years, your dignity and value is so suppressed, you're walking in shame. So when you have a society that's all walking in shame, their productivity is not going to be on the highest level of achievement, because they're all trying to suppress each other because jealousy is created during that particular time. When you equalize everyone and you tell them you all have the same opportunity, but one person puts in a little bit more effort than another person, then guess what happens? The person that puts more effort may succeed, but the person that doesn't put effort wants to get paid the same amount of money as the other person. Well, this person, he or she, is going to find means of actually either bribing the system or oppressing the other one who is succeeding ahead of them, because you always have to pull each other down. You can never just rise above everybody else, because the system already said you're equal to one another and you're going to have equal outcomes as well. So you're not going to work 40 hours and make additional amount of money. The only way to make additional amount of money is to bribe somehow the system, bribe the people in the government, bribe the people who are around you, and make a little bit of a headway.
So like equal outcome doesn't necessarily bring up the person on the bottom, it limits the people from going farther.
Right, exactly. So that's why when you create a socialist governance state, you will never see the society progress anywhere, because they will pull each other down on their own. You don't even have to have a dictator actually telling you what to do. You already create a false state of fear. And so you're constantly afraid that somebody is watching you and going to betray you, or you're also afraid that if you're succeeding and somebody who is watching you is going to steal from you. So you're trying to hide what you have made, while everybody else who is not working is trying to steal from somebody else who is making. So let me just give you an example. My dad, under communism, had to wait for 10 years to get a car. You couldn't just go and find a car and get it. You had to write your name on a piece of paper, put certain amount of money. It was all of his entire savings at that point. And then they tell him, you have to wait until your name comes up alphabetically on the list, and when we bring enough import. So, for example, his name is Demirkova, so it's the fourth letter in the alphabet. Well, we were already kind of on the top, but if they start actually giving cars from the middle part of the alphabet, we're ending up on the bottom. So it depends on who has paid more money and bribing the system to see which letter of the alphabet they're going to start giving cars from. So now we end up being almost last. So he's waiting 10 years with a little ticket in his hand that he would take out and look at and remind himself, oh yeah, I gave a certain amount of money. Hopefully I'll get a phone call one day and somebody's going to tell me that the car has arrived. Well then, finally, 10 years later, the phone call came in. I mean, it's a true miracle that we even got a phone call, because he had a huge trust in the system that nobody's just gonna steal the money and move on, but somehow they're gonna give him the car. Well, I remember the first thing that they said is, do you have the rest of the money? Because if you don't, your name goes back at the end of the alphabet for the next time when new import comes in. And all of our import came from Russia. So we end up with a red Lada. My dad was so proud, import from Russia. And there were not that many people driving cars at those days because not a lot of people had even savings. So guess what happens? Now my dad has to make sure that he hides the car from getting stolen because not a lot of people have the car. So not only does he have to hide the car, he has to remove the windshield wipers, the hubcaps, all of the mirrors from the sides. Anything that is external, he has to remove it because somebody could come and steal it. So every time he parks the car, this is the routine. He removes everything off, then he locks the car, and then we had actually 2 alarm systems attached to the car so that nobody can steal it. The more alarm systems you have, the better it is so that it would take them longer to steal the car. Well, that's how you live your life in every single area. You had a little bit more, but you don't ever tell anybody else what you have because you already have a distrust created within the society. Even if the neighbors were your best friends, you still couldn't fully trust them because of the what if factor of them betraying you or turning you into the KGB or getting you into concentration camp. You just never knew who is for you or who is against you. Yeah. So that's how we lived.
Yeah. And as far as they say, we were looking up the definitions of socialism, and one definition was basically everything's owned by the community equally, right?
Right.
So does that play out as far as do the leaders accept the same amount of pay as the peasants or the rest of the people, or does it really end up being equal like that?
No, it's never equal. So first of all, it's equal for everybody else that's on the bottom. And so people who are on the top, we call them the elite or the part of the government or the oligarchs. They are the ones that were already a part of the system that came up with the idea, hey, we're going to be a part of the Communist Party or the Socialist Party, which, by the way, like we clarified, communism and socialism are very similar. So I always put them in the same sentence so that people can begin to understand that once you become a socialist state, you will end up becoming communist. There is just no other way around it. So in that particular time, we have everybody on the top. They don't give out their money and their goods and their houses to all of us who don't have anything. Oh no, they actually take everything that's best that people had already worked hard for, and they still own it while they dictate to you how you should live your life. And so exactly. We had our little house, and then all of our family, grandparents, parents, grandchildren, we all lived there because you can't just go and buy another house. So a lot of people were always used to living, several generations crammed together in a 4-bedroom house. 4-bedroom meaning that included the kitchen and the living room, and then the next 2 rooms. So everybody's crammed there. So I grew up living with my grandma in the same room. I didn't even have a bed. We slept on the same bed. So we had very little, but we didn't know any better. We didn't know that there was a different life because all of the news we were receiving from Russia, and they were very limited, about an hour to 2 every day.
Wow.
Biased media.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Fake news. Wow. So one of the things I hear from your everything I'm gathering is you mentioned a lot about fear. Mm-hmm. That fear was a factor because I'm paralleling it to what's going on now. There was always the fear that somebody would turn you in. There was always the fear that you couldn't tell people what was going on. You had to hide. And it feels like that fear was coming from the top. Like even right now in our nation today, there's so much fear with this COVID-19. People are afraid to go to a store. There's that fear that you can get infected. There's fear of going to a place of worship. Fear. So my question is, if it's promoting so much fear, does God have a place in socialism and communism?
Right, exactly. Well, first of all, when Marx created socialism, he created it on the basis that there is no God. And that's the whole premise of socialism. It cannot coexist together with God. You either have to worship the government and the people who are in charge, or you worship God and you have certain consequences, like people were arrested They were killed, they were thrown in concentration camps. We had no idea when we were growing up that those things even existed because everything was hidden. We just knew somebody had gone missing. And then you realize, oh, I think there are concentration camps, but nobody knew where they were because they were all underground. They were hidden in places that you couldn't actually have access to go to. So nobody actually knew until communism fell. So first of all, let me just bring the subject back into fear first, and then we're going to talk about, does God even have a place in socialism? So first of all, where did fear get born? Like, how did fear start? It started in the garden. It started with the devil deceiving Adam and Eve to believe that God was hiding something from them, and therefore they were not enough, and they were not in the image of God. But then if they took from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, then they would become like God. So it started with the fear of, I'm missing out on something, and therefore I gotta acknowledge and get what I'm thinking here and create my own judgment of the knowledge of what is good and what is evil. So from that moment on, we as human beings create our own understanding without God of what we call good and what we call evil. And we're basically influenced now by the identity that we took on from the sinful nature. So when you have sin and fear coexist together beautifully because they're orchestrated by the devil, right? And what would he want to do to the entire continent, to the entire society? Keep everybody in bondage, fearful of each other, and fearful that God is against them. And socialism plays a perfect role in it, because if the premise is always, if there was a God, then why is all the bad happening right now? Well, there must not be God, because if there was one, then none of this would exist. But socialism and communism took it to another level, that you now become a self-worshipper. You begin to think, okay, well, I am God and there is nobody else. Or the government is God and now we have to acknowledge and worship them, even to death. So if a communist dictator died in Russia or in Bulgaria, they would turn on the sirens for the entire nation. And for 5 minutes, no matter where you might be, you have to stop and you have to bow on your knees for 5 minutes as an acknowledgement to the person who has just passed away. It didn't matter if you knew him or not, or if you disregarded whatever they said. If you did not bow, somebody is always watching you to see where you're standing and on what corner you are. And so you're constantly thinking, I better do this. I better obey. I better submit, because if somebody catches me, then there are consequences. And here is how fear works.
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Exactly. Nobody ever told you right away what the consequences are. They always tell you, if you don't do this, there will be bad consequences. But what are they? Because if you can figure out what the consequences are, you eliminate the fear to another level, and you can perhaps think about it of ways to escape. But because it's constantly the what if and how you might get put in jail and how you might be betrayed, then people begin to create fear amongst themselves. So the news never reported much. There were no laws really to create more fear. It was just, once you're on the news and they tell you, well, there is a possibility that this, and this could happen, immediately everybody's like, oh my gosh, we better not do anything. We better not budge against the system. By the time I was already born, I was in 1975, born into that style and in that dictatorship, I didn't know any better. Nobody from my family was ever going to go against the system. I mean, there was no way that my mom, who was a school teacher, was going to disagree with the Communist Party. It didn't matter what she was being taught in school and college. If she agreed or disagreed, she had to explain and portray that exact same mentality to the students. And the students, we were raised with the same mentality as the teachers. Oppressive, suppressive mentality, putting everybody to shame. I was left-handed, couldn't be left-handed. I had to become right-handed because, once again, you may be all equal, but you really are not until they equalize you. If you had anything different, like outside defect, immediately people would put their kids in an orphanage because they were ashamed that their child wasn't good enough and presentable to everybody else to be accepted. So that's exactly what socialism creates. Fear between each other and fear from God that is not the biblical fear.
Wow.
So the answer, can God exist in socialism? I would say yes and no. Yes, for the people who can find God in a supernatural way and begin to spread the news of the gospel to other people underground and give them hope. And no, in a general sense, because God is a competition and he can never be acknowledged in a school system or at work or anywhere else that he exists. So no Christmas, no Easter celebrations, no nothing. I didn't even know that there was Christmas to be celebrated because we never heard the name Jesus.
Wow, yeah, God's a God of freedom. Where the Spirit of the Lord is full freedom. And that's in total contrast, because
Exactly.
socialism is control.
Wow, I love the scripture that says, there is no fear in love. Perfect love casts out all fear. I just want to say thank you for joining us for part 1. And I believe that as we continue, stay tuned for part 2, part 3, because these are real issues that we are discussing. And I thank God for Ross and Ceitci here, that we are reasoning together. So if you're out there in a house church, or you're sitting there, you're hearing us from YouTube, whatever platform it is, these are real questions. Socialism is real, but that is not what God has for us. God has called us into freedom. So I'm going to invite you to write us if you have further questions. God bless you. Bye.